What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the official Third Age Reforged YouTube channel. My name is Jordan, also known as J-Monster, and thank you for joining me for a replay battle. Today I have a very special 3 vs 3 sub-commander battle. We are actually testing out some new maps that are going to be coming out in the 0.9 patch in just a few weeks here. So we're going to go into the arm compositions and the rules for what constitutes a sub-commander battle, and then we'll jump right into the replay. I hope you guys enjoy it. So as I mentioned previously, this is a sub-commander battle. For those of you a little bit unfamiliar with the concept, a sub-commander battle is usually fought between 6 and 8 players with equal numbers on either side, each player commanding a section of a larger grand army. So there's not really traditional armies in a sense. Each player is going to be in charge of, say, cavalry or infantry or ranged units, basically amalgamating both the artillery and the bowman corps into one section of the army. So we're going to do the army breakdowns by section, bearing that in mind. We're going to start with the cavalrymen, then we'll pass over to the archers, and then we'll look at the bulk of any army, that being the infantry force. So here on the left flank of what shall henceforth be known as the blue team, we have the cavalry under Sin of the Dark Cloud. He's got a large number of Arnor sergeants, a couple units of Arnor knights thrown in there as well, as alongside some Knights of Inuminas. These guys are very expensive, very deadly. 2 HP, heavy armor, and effective against armor as well. So they're good on the charge and very good in prolonged melee. Not something you want to get tangled in for a very long time, for sure. He's also got a couple units of Dunedain Scouts, which is really nice for projecting the power of his cavalry a little bit farther out of the range of melee. He's also got a unit of Bodyguards, which is where the general is hanging out. You can see him looking very sexy there in his Arnorian plate mail. But let's move now to the archer companies under Happy Meal. He's got a couple units of Dunedain Rangers, a unit of Ballista, a couple units of Gatekeepers, and there's a lot of hidden units in here as well. So some Cardinal Elders, some more Dunedain Rangers, and there's some Band Nebraska Archers, which is cool. You never really get to see the hobbits in too many multiplayer battles, so it's nice to see these guys making a return. They're quite cost effective for what they are, so honestly they're not a terrible pick in an Eriador army. Moving over here, we have the infantry under Teemo, and he's got a large number of Arnor men-at-arms, 2 or 3 units, I believe, of battle-ready Dunedain, and a large number of Arnor militia spearmen, who are going to play a very important role in this battle. He's also got a couple units of Dunedain wardens, which is like an upgraded version, essentially, of the Arnor spearmen. These guys have 2 HP, a lot better at holding the line than these militiamen, who do so mostly by weight of numbers. He's also got a couple units here of dismounted Dunedain Knights. These guys are, again, 2 HP. They're essentially dismounted Knights of Inuminas, not to be underestimated, although I believe they lack the armor-piercing trait of their mounted counterparts. Opposite the Arnorians, we have the red team commanding the forces of Rune. This is the cavalry under Son of Imladris, and he's got a couple units here of Wind Riders of Khand, who are essentially everything that you want a light cavalry unit to be. They are so fast that they cannot be caught by just about anything except another unit of Wind Riders of Khand, and they're very, very good at penetrating through formations and harassing enemy armies and dealing with some of the more lightly armed enemy skirmishers. But as you would expect from a light cavalry unit, they tend to fall apart in prolonged melee with just about anything, and they are very, very vulnerable to missile fire. He's also got a large number of heavy cavalry present in this force. He's got 1 unit of Brotherhood of the Lance. These guys will stand up to just about anything in the game, except I think some of the more powerful warg units. He's also got a couple units of Loki ENS Rim, which is, it's nice to see these guys again. They are a very classic 3rd Age unit, but in the current iteration of Reforged, they tend to get outstripped a little bit by the Variag Cataphracts, who cost less and tend to do a little bit more. But still, nice to see them again on the battlefield. He's also got a large number of medium cavalry, a lot of lancers. So he's got some horse guard, some Variag lancers, very vulnerable in melee. So you got to keep these guys moving for as long as possible until they begin to fail you. But as long as you keep them moving and apply them judiciously, rather, they will serve you very well. To round off the force, he's got a couple units of Variag Horse Archers, making this a very, very versatile cavalry force, not one to be underestimated, and I think the Arnorians are going to have a little bit of trouble in dealing with these guys. Over here we have the Archer companies being commanded by Cannon Fodder, and he's got, I believe, 3 units of Loknar Rim. These guys are a decent answer to some of the better good faction Archer units that tend to outrange and outdamage those of the traditionally evil factions. The Loknar Rim have competitive range, pretty decent damage, but they are a little bit more lightly armored, so you're going to have to watch them in a missile fight. He's also got a unit or 2 of Camel Shadowbows, very good at setting up ambushes. They're essentially Camel Shadow Guard, but just armed with longbows. Again, a decent enough answer to some of the good faction long-range skirmish units. He's also got a catapult and a large number of clan hunters, kind of just like a throwaway archer unit, good for soaking up arrows, but also good at just massive volume of fire, because there's so many that are available in a single unit. He's also got, I believe, 3 or 4 units of clan crossbows, very, very cost-effective. These guys are AP missiles, of course, as you would expect from crossbow units, but they're also very cheap in addition to that. He's also got, I believe, 1 or 2 units of Variag Bowmen. I always make sure I have 1 or 2 units of these guys. They stand up very good in a skirmish fight against some of the good faction skirmishers, and they are not bad with their bow damage to boot. In addition to all of that, he's got a large number of Balkoth tribesmen, so this is a very cost-efficient force with a lot of AP in it. The Balkoth tribesmen, if you can get them into position, they can do so much work, and I think they only cost like 400 or 500 florins to bring with you. So a very worthy pick to bring in a runic army. Over here we have the infantry being commanded by Rules 1. He's got a large number of clansmen. These guys are kind of like a throwaway meat shield unit, but they are able to put down stakes, which can be useful for funneling enemy cavalry units into certain areas and keeping them away from your archers. He's also got a large number of Loke Gamp Rim. These are kind of like heavily armored pikemen. They're almost halfway rather, I think, between a spear unit and a pike unit. Very useful though, and quite cost effective as much of the runic force tends to be. Back here, though, we have the meat and potatoes of the runic army. We've got, I believe, 3 or 4 units of Loke Flag Rim. These are the powerhouse infantry unit for Rune. We've got a lot of armor, and they are AP, so they are very good at smashing apart heavy infantry units. Supporting that battle line, he's got a large number of nomadic warriors. These guys are pretty decent light infantry. They don't cost a whole lot, I think about 400 florins, and they have decent attack values to boot. Definitely not something you want to stick on your front lines, but if they're going to support a unit like this, just with their numbers and with their decent attack, then they can definitely excel and be a valuable part of your army. But that basically does it, I think, for the army compositions. Let's go ahead and let's jump right into the replay. Rune is going to kick off the fight here by being very, very aggressive with their army. They're moving forward, looking to menace the cavalry of Sin of the Dark Cloud, is just across the field from them, possibly even preventing the linking up of these two forces if they advance quick enough. I think that would be a bit of a stretch, though. That might be quite difficult for them to do. But you can see now some archers moving up, possibly to harass the retreat of these Dunedain cavalrymen as they retreat back towards the relative safety of their army. One little note here is that Cannon Fodder actually has a ballista as well, so this is a very powerful infantry and skirmishing force being commanded by the runic armies. 2 pieces of artillery and a very healthy, very diverse force of skirmishers, I think makes this a fight that is very much in favor of the runic player. If it comes down to a skirmish phase, a prolonged skirmish phase, Rune is definitely going to come out on top in that. You can see them moving forward some of their archer units. This Loknar Rim is a little bit, I think, too far forward, far away from any support right now than I would personally feel comfortable with. There's still a lot of Arnorian cavalrymen in the fields, and if they were to rush forward, there would really be nowhere for these foot archers rather to hide from them, and that could incur some very, very difficult to recover from losses early on in the game. Over here, it looks like the Arnorians trying to get their own skirmish line set up. You can see these Dunedain Rangers here getting themselves set up on the right flank. These guys are really, really good at setting up ambushes. Of course, they can hide just about anywhere, and they have excellent range to boot. So we got 1 unit of Variad Bowman here moving forward. I think this might even potentially be a little bit of a micro mistake on the part of Cannon Fodder, because these guys are really close to the lines. And look at this. The Arnorian cavalry is responding in kind. Sin of the Dark Cloud sending forward a unit of Arnor sergeants, one of his more expendable cavalry units, I suppose, to check the advance of these Variags. They now realize the pickle that they've gotten themselves into, and they're going to fall back across the field after taking some fairly significant losses from counterfire from the Dunedain Rangers and the gatekeepers as well. These Arnorian sergeants just charging forward. I think there's actually 2 units here. Yes, 2 units of their Arnorian cavalry being committed to the fight. I think they see a big opportunity. The runic infantry is very much out of position, and there's nothing to defend these poor skirmishers from the cavalry charge, except, of course, for the skirmishers themselves. So Arnor sergeant's going to punch right through that very thin line of Loknar Rim, getting into the back where the clan crossbows are, but there's just so many lines. Look at this tiered defense here of skirmish units. There's bowmen everywhere, and behind them, a huge number of Balkoth tribesmen. Rushing in to try and drive back the Arnorians is some of the Wind Riders of Khan, these very swift cavalry units, chasing these guys down. In fact, this 1 unit here already broken down to a meager 37, about half strength now. Over here, I think the same thing is happening, 34, and they're going to take a lot of casualties in the retreat. Things getting off to a really good start, I think, for the runic player. Luckily for the Arnorians, Timo managed to very quickly form up his battalions of Arnor militia, who are going to be able to cover that retreat at least somewhat. Over here, these Wind Riders of Can now charging into battle against the gatekeepers, but I think they're going to very quickly find that they've bitten off a lot more than they can chew. The gatekeepers they also double as heavy infantry with those big, I'm not sure what you would call those, they almost look like pole axes / spears, and the Wind Riders of Kant are going to have a very difficult time fighting these guys. It's hard for them to break through that formation very easily. They are light cavalry, so they don't have the mass needed. Over here, more and more, we're going to slow it down, in fact, because there's so much going on. More and more cavalry charges going in, the runic players being very aggressive. These Variag Lancers now charging into battle against these Band of Brass Archers, who have taken a lot of casualties, but they still manage to be holding up quite well, and those Variags are thinking about routing themselves, not liking that engagement at all, with so many Arnorians present in the battlefield. Down here on the Arnorian right flank, the Horse Guard charging through the ranks of the Arnor militiamen, but this is really not a fight that these guys are going to win. You don't want to keep them in a prolonged melee like this for too long. You want to keep them always cycle charging, always moving, or you'll very, very quickly find that they fall apart on you. Over here, though, these horsemen have managed to penetrate through the cordon set up by the Arnor Militia, in fact, routing a unit of Arnor Militia in that charge, which is going to allow the Runic Cavalry to get in into those very vulnerable, very valuable Dunedain Rangers. And of course, this is going to oblige the Arnorians under Teemo to respond in kind. You can see a lot of infantry moving itself up to cover their retreat and get themselves formed up to hold back the Runic Cavalry, who is just charging in en masse at this point. You can see now the Golden Boys have been committed. Loke Inas Rim charging forward, looking to take on those Band of Brass Archers. Band of Brass Archers retreating in the face of that, actually denying them the charge a little bit. Because of the way the pathfinding works, this is actually a fairly valuable strategy to get a cavalry unit on the charge to use up its charge while dealing minimum casualties to your infantry units. They're now fleeing backwards into a couple units here of battle-ready Dunedain, who I think are going to be more than capable of standing up to these Loki Inas Rim in a prolonged melee. Over here we have some routing on the part of those Variag Lancers. They're now fleeing in the face of those gatekeepers who have taken very few casualties, actually, in return for taking down two fairly important cavalry units but from the Runic player. And that's going to leave these Loki Inas Rim here very, very exposed and vulnerable to a surround. And in fact, it looks like that's what the Arnorians were trying to do here. Teemo trying to move some Dunedain Wardens around the back of these guys to cut off their retreat. The Loki Inas Rim, though, not going to be caught so easily, retreating now from that battle. But look at this, their morale is actually already a little bit shaky, surprisingly. I think that's because of the presence of so many of these troops. You can see the cavalry just charging forward, trying to get as many cycle charges off as possible, weakening those front lines. Meanwhile, the infantry under Rules is coming in to consolidate this position and begin to form a battle line right here on this little cliffside. It's a very, very lopsided battlefield. It's going to be interesting to see how this works out for the Runic players. Back here, you can see the cavalry under Sin of the Dark Cloud just kind of waiting around. He's been a little bit more cautious, I think, after those two units of Arnorian Knights, or Arnorian Mounted Sergeants, got themselves routed very, very quickly. The Runic player, though, showing no such restraint, moving in now with his brother of the Hood of the Lance, concentrating his heavy cavalry over here on the defending right flank, or left flank, rather, the attacking right flank, looking to potentially punch right through. I think he was probably targeting those gatekeepers. Happy Meal, of course, realizes what is happening, is now beginning to fall back. The Arnorian militia have done their job, absolutely. They've held back some of the cavalry, given all of their more important units a chance to retreat, and now they're giving their lives finally in one glorious melee here to let the rest of these gatekeepers flee in the face of this overwhelming cavalry assault. It looks like we have some Dunedain scouts. Possibly not the best use of their Dunedain scouts, but I think it might be a little bit of a desperation ploy, trying to keep these Loke Inas Rim out of the back of his gatekeepers. Very important crossbow unit, and it looks like the Loke Inas Rim, though, they're going to be absolutely relentless and pursue them far behind the Arnorian lines. I think this is going to turn out to be a mistake for the Runic player. They are very, very exposed here. You can see now these battle-ready Dunedain now closing the steel jaws of this trap, getting into the rear of these Loki Inas Rim, pinning them against these halberdmen. This is going to go very, very poorly for them. It looks like we're going to see some routing in just a few seconds here. This is some very important cavalry units that have been absolutely destroyed by the Arnorians. I think the Runic player now sees the error of his ways and going to try and get out of there. But even his Brotherhood of the Lance is trapped, unable to escape from all of the fodder units, pinning them in place, allowing the Arnorians to react with some of their more elite, much more dangerous units. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit here. You can see the Runic player now, the Runic players beginning to set up their skirmish lines, looking to take advantage of the chaos that has been caused by their cavalry. You can see some javelin volleys going into the back of these poor Dunedain wardens who are just taking it. They're doing admirably, somehow managing to stand up to those javelin volleys, but I think the constant peppering and now the presence of so many runic infantry on the battlefield is going to make these guys possibly rethink this and begin to rout. You can see that they are already shaken. I don't think it's going to get too much better for them. These Battle Ready Dunedain just hacking down these light clansmen. These light clansmen, they are doing their job, though. They are beginning to wear down some of these important units. Oh, my goodness. Look at the devastation that catapult is causing. Taking a huge bite right out of this dismounted Dunedain unit. Absolutely tearing the heart out of a very important infantry unit for the Arnorians. Things not looking great for Arnor at this point. They managed to eliminate the cavalry, but they are very much bottled up right now. They only have one means of getting the rest of their mounted warriors out, and that is going to take them some time to scoot all the way around here. And I think that the runic player will be ready for them in the event that they do. So we've got some very horse archers here trying to skirmish down some of these Dunedain rangers, doing not too bad against them. But down here on the blue team's right flank, you can see a huge concentration of their Arnorian men-at-arms, almost in an oblique formation. They've got some battle lines set up, although it is actually starting to crumble a little bit here on the left. But they've got a heavy concentration here on one of those flanks, looking to break the runic flank and then begin to roll up the rest of their line. You can see some breaking here from the Lokgang Brim, so they have a little bit of a breakthrough. Some of these Arnorian men-at-arms are pursuing them, and some of the clansmen as well, but I think that that's going to prove to be a mistake. These guys are going to get themselves a little bit out of position, making them easy prey for the rest of the runic army. Over here on the left, though, it looks like they have managed to turn the situation around a little bit. These dismounted Dunedain knights, very vulnerable to potential enfilading fire coming in from the artillery pieces. We might see a little bit of that in just a few moments here. But they've definitely punched a big hole in the Arnorian lines, even managed to get some of the gatekeepers to commit to the fighting alongside some banded brass archers. So a significant portion of the Arnorian skirmishing line is committed here on their left, trying to hold back the tide of golden and silver armored horsemen. And it looks like Rune is going to consolidate that position, consolidate the gains that they made very early here with their cavalry, with a huge commitment of infantry. Look at this. Ton of Lokflagrim moving into combat alongside some Camel Shadow Guard, in fact. Look at this. They were hidden, so I didn't see them in their army compositions, but I think there is 2 units, in fact. These guys are very deadly. They've got about 40 attack. They are anti-armor and anti-cavalry, so a very versatile force. A little bit vulnerable to missiles, though. Moving in now, and as they move in, the runic forces are now retreating, allowing these guys some time to set up their lines and to do their bloody work. So a lot of really nice coordination here on the part of the runic player. Gotta hand it to him there, definitely. But of course, this breakthrough is going to allow these guys to be outflanked. This is really, really bad news for the Arnorian left flank. Down here on their right, though, they are faring much better. It looks like the runic forces are really struggling to hold them back. There's just a thin line here of Lokgang Brim to hold back this huge mass of Arnorian and Arthedain men-at-arms. Backed up by those nomadic warriors. I don't know how long they're going to be able to hold the line. There is some reserves here. Rules has deployed some of his Lokflagrim to try and hold back the tide. Looks like he's kind of setting up a safety net here to deal with any of the survivors from the Arnorians, which is really nice positioning. In fact, he's allowing Cadenfodder to get some enfilading fire into any units that charge right through here. And there is still, I think, some reserves to hold down this large gap in the runic line here. So anything that manages to scoot by or come through here is going to get funneled into a killing zone that has been, it appears to me, carefully prepared by the runic players. Let's just get a nice little overhead view here. Look at the carnage. It's just absolute bedlam down here on this mountainside. It doesn't really seem like there's a clear winner at this point. The Arnorians are really managing to push through the inferior runic infantry. There's a lot of multiple HP units in here. These battle-ready Dunedain alongside these what are they called? There they are, the Dunedain Wardens. That's it. Are very, very tough infantry force and will stick around for a long time. It's a nice 1-2 punch, those spears and those swords. Got to be careful about that. Over here, just absolute devastation being wreaked amongst the ranks of those skirmishing units. The very, very powerful, very versatile artillery force from the runic player really starting to bear fruit there for the Eastern Empire. This ballista here from Happy Meal trying to move forward, probably looking to do a little bit of counter sniping, maybe take down the catapults at first. Definitely the biggest threat to their bunched up masses of infantry, and this oblique formation down here on their right is that catapult. If anything can shut this movement down, it will be that catapult. It's really hard to tell who's got the upper hand in this battle. There is still a lot of runic reserves that have not been committed, and the Arnorians are a little bit pinned and a little bit clumped up. And there's some really nice tiered skirmishing lines here that have been set up by cannon fodder. Not going to be easy to break through. Even if they win the infantry fight, they're still going to have to slog through this, and this can potentially break an army if they lose their general early on. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to turn now to normal speed. So we've got some movement here amongst the Dunedain scouts, looking possibly to exploit any gaps in the lines here, maybe even get some easy shots off on those very deadly artillery pieces. You can see doing a lot of damage. A little bit of friendly fire here, unfortunately, for the runic player, getting a shot into the back of his own nomadic axeman. Really not a good thing for morale to be taking shots from behind from those flaming ammunition. And looks like, oh, this is very important. Check this out. Big movement here on the part of the Arnorian cavalry. They have worn down the runic cavalry. That once mighty, very versatile cavalry force has been all but destroyed at this point, I think. And the Arnorians going to take full advantage of that. Moving up here on the runic left, a battalion after battalion of Arnor Knights, backed up by some bodyguards, charging into battle against some Variag horse archers. These guys not going to be able to hold them back for very long. Though it looks like a little bit of a mistake here on the part of the Arnorians. Really only one cavalry unit is going to be needed to take down those horse archers and to push their way through. So what they should be doing, I think, is to take the other two units around here and begin to cause a little bit of chaos in the back lines of Rune. Rune now scrambling to move in whatever horsemen are still left to them to try and plug this very large gap in their defenses. But there's just so many Arnorians, and they're now starting to kind of sort out their lines a little bit and outflank the runic cavalry. There's just so many of them. There's not really a whole lot that Rune can do at this point to begin to gun them down. Although very wisely they're moving in some clan crossbowmen. If they can get these guys into position to hold them down long enough with that unit of Brotherhood of the Lance, they can do a lot of damage, potentially even turning the tides. The Brotherhood of the Lance have multiple HP and a lot of armor, and these Arnorian Knights, however, do not have such advantages. What armor they do have will be negated by the AP missiles coming out of these clan crossbows. So this is, I think, going to be a very, very important moment in the battle right here. If they can drive back the Arnorian cavalry, they will be able to secure their left flank and prevent any more cavalry charges coming into the back. Though it looks like over here we're seeing a breakthrough. The runic lines have been whittled down to the point where they're actually able to charge through with two very important units. And this, I think, is going to prove to be disastrous for the runic players. There's a lot of cavalry now charging through their lines. They're forced to commit their skirmishers. Luckily, they do have this tiered defense, and that's going to help them hold on for quite a while, even against this heavy cavalry. But things looking very, very grim. Their flank appears to be almost lost. I think those Brotherhood of the Lance now have been driven back. What remains, rather, of the runic cavalry being beaten in melee right now, which leaves this left flank open, and their center has also been broken as well. So this is a little bit of a disaster, I think, for the runic forces. I really thought they had this in the bag, but it would appear that just because of this cavalry, they were able, because Son of the Dark Cloud was able to keep them in reserve for so long and keep them so healthy at this late stage in the battle, that's going to be the decisive turning point for the Arnorians, who are suffering quite badly at the hands of this devastating skirmish line. We're going to go ahead here and we're going to speed it up just a little bit. Watch some of the melee unfold. Not a whole lot left for the runic player. You can see some Loke Flag Grim. They're going to try and capitalize, I think, on the sluggishness of these Dunedain Wardens, allowing themselves a little bit of a breakthrough, possibly to get into those Band of Brass Archers. They are being driven back by a hail of arrows coming out of those Dunedain Rangers, who are still very, very healthy. Over here, this poor catapult unit from Happy Meal has been devastated by the runic catapult, but it's just, or by the runic ballista rather, but it's just a little bit too late, I think. Somehow oh my goodness, there goes the cavalry general, Son of Imladris' general, falling in battle gloriously against his enemies. But surprisingly enough, the runic players have managed to, or the Arnorian players have managed to drive back the runic advance on the left. There was a lot of really important infantry units that were committed in here. You can see a lot of dead Kalmul Shadow Guard. Possibly, it looks to me like by arrow fire, in fact. Maybe those gatekeepers managed to get themselves into a position where they could destroy them. These Cardolan archers looking like they were in a nice flanking position, doing a lot of damage to that runic infantry. Things just absolutely in shambles, and another runic general has gone down, falling in battle against the battle-ready Dunedain, who were chasing him as he fled off the battlefield with his bodyguard. We're going to go ahead and we're going to slow it down just a little bit here, as there's a lot going on in the back lines. you can see the Arnorian cavalry getting shut down a little bit. This tier defense really paying off for the runic player, but I think it's only a matter of time just because of how much infantry there is still left and how much cavalry they have to deal with. You can see this very important unit of Camel Shadow Guard now being targeted by these Knights of Inuminos. These poor Knights of Inuminos caught in a little bit of a crossfire here because of all of the runic skirmish units, but they are going to get a nice charge into the Shadow Bows, take down at least 20 of them. It's a very significant portion of the unit, about a sixth of the unit falling in that charge. And that wasn't even like the most well lined up charge that they could have possibly had. So this is very, very devastating for the runic player to lose an elite unit like that. We'll see these poor clan hunters now getting charged in the rear by these Knights of Inuminos. Possibly not the best target for them. There's only so much time that these Knights of Inuminos have to do what they need to do because of the presence of so many skirmish units surrounding them, just firing arrows into them from all angles. So I think it would be possibly better to maybe target this unit of Loknar Rim instead. And it looks like that's in fact what they are doing. This is Sin of the Dark Held now targeting Cannon Fodder's Loknar Rim, looking to shut down this very healthy, look at this, 158 still left in the unit, very healthy, very elite unit. Although, look at, oh no, actually they're going to go for another unit of Clan Hunters, going, I guess, for the very juicy target that these massed ranks here are presenting for the cavalrymen. Really, really unfortunate for the Rim player, but let's just take a moment and appreciate the absolute devastation that is happening here along the lines. You can see these Dunedain Knights kind of actually being driven back a little bit in a hail of skirmish fire. And there's just so many dead bodies, so many runic and Arnorian forces have lost their lives, especially on the flanks. That's where a lot of slaughter took place. You can see cavalrymen, infantrymen, all mixed together in this one mass grave. So Unit Brotherhood of the Lance now down to a mere 5, looking to take on some of these Arnor men-at-arms. Not doing too bad. Looks like they're somehow managing to drive these guys back down to Shaken. Well, I'm sure their morale will stabilize in just a little bit. Yeah, I think this is going to be all she wrote for the runic player. Most of their infantry has been destroyed. In fact, I would wager that all of it has been destroyed and driven back. And now the Arnorians are free to advance. Looks like these Knights of Inuminos, what remains of them, charging into this ballista, looking to shut them down, try and stop some of that devastating artillery fire from going into their army. It's really down to the Arnorians to try and shut down the very important units in the skirmish army, because despite Rune being very much on the back foot at this point, if they can manage to get the Arnorians locked at range, they can turn this around very quick. There's still a lot of skirmishers here. You can see a lot of really healthy units in the back, especially these Variag Bowmen and some of these Loknar Rim as well, and some more elite units like these Camel Shadow Bows. Still about 87 left in the unit. They could turn this fight around. Looks like the bodyguard here from Sin of the Dark Held looking to take on the Loknar Rim. Well, it looks like they might be thinking a little bit better of it, going for maybe one of the more juicy targets. One of these very healthy units of Variag Bowmen. Still 160. They've been doing very well for themselves, I'm sure. These poor Knights of Inuminas, we might see them rout. That would be very, very unfortunate. All this missile fire, though, I think it's going to be only a matter of time before they begin to drop and begin to rout. Ooh, some nice artillery shots going off into the front of these Arthedain men-at-arms. These catapults getting one last spiteful volley into the front of these Arthedain soldiers. Looks like they might begin to rout if they're not careful. Oh no, their morale has in fact stabilized. I think another couple volleys, though, from that catapult that would have seen this unit off the field very, very quickly. Still a lot of Dunedain Rangers, though. Looks like Happy Meal now moving them up, using some of his other units to put down a little bit of covering fire, which is a great strategy. This way you're not kind of putting all your eggs in one basket, moving your entire skirmish force at the same time. These Dunedain Rangers now getting themselves possibly into a nice flanking position, or he could be using them as light infantry. The Dunedain Rangers are very swift, so if they are out of ammunition, this is not a bad thing to do with them, is trying to exploit some gaps in enemy lines and go for some important units like this catapult crew. In the back here, you can see these bodyguards still wreaking havoc, although they are beginning to fall apart down to a mere 7. If they're not careful, the Arnorians could lose their general, and who knows what can happen when you lose your general. Back here, the Knights of Inuminos looking to follow up that charge from the bodyguard into the Loknar Rim, possibly looking to begin to rout some of these skirmish units. I don't think that Cannon Fodder has lost his general yet, but if this keeps up, it's only going to be a matter of time. Over here, these poor Camel Shadow Bows down to a pitiful 36 units, getting themselves stuck in close combat with these dismounted Dunedain. Really not a great fight for them, although it is holding them down long enough for these Variag Bowmen to get some nice flanking shots off on those Dunedain. Although Happy Meal is following his allies into the fray, looking to consolidate their position with some solid skirmish fire. A couple units here of Gatekeeper still looking pretty healthy, 62 and 71 respectively in those 2 units. I think it's going to be more than enough to put the final nail in the coffin of this runic resistance. You can see some routing beginning to go on here. Some clan hunters now fleeing in the face of overwhelming odds. These Variag Bowmen, I think these guys were at 160 not long ago, and these guys were also very healthy, now down to 81 and 37. Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to speed it up just a little bit here. You can see them just slowly mopping up what remains of the runic force. That once proud army here now being sandwiched between some Arthurian men-at-arms and some cavalrymen. These Lochnar Rim very bravely putting up a final stand back here on the hill. It's just not going to be enough. With all of these infantry and all that artillery fire and cavalry charges, they just can't take it, and they're now fleeing off the field. So many dead warriors on the battlefield today. Really hard to tell who gets to come out of this as a victor. Pyrrhic victory for both sides. Looks like we're starting to see some admit defeats now from the runic players. A great game to everybody involved. It just didn't go the way the runic players wanted. I think they lost their cavalry a little bit too early on, allowing the Arnorians to outmaneuver them and to just cause absolute bedlam in their back lines with their cavalrymen. Also, strangely enough, the Arnorian infantry badly spanked the runic infantry line. I think possibly they had a little bit too many spears and not enough upfront killing power among their infantrymen. Taking a look at the casualties here, Bodyguard's doing really well. It's a very small unit. I think they only have about 50 or so in them, definitely killing a couple units to themselves. Look at that, those Knights of Illuminos getting a whopping 458 kills. That is brutal. Definitely more than paid for themselves in this battle. Down here, the Dismounted Dunedain Knights doing absolute work. The Battle Ready Dunedain getting almost as much, if not more, than the Dismounted Dunedain Knights. Dunedain Wardens doing 206. Usually you don't see spear units get high kills like that. Well, they definitely proved their worth. Even the Arnorian Militia, 71 kills. A lot of those are going to be cavalry because that's the first enemies that they ran into, and they routed shortly after. Very unfortunate for the runic player right there. But yeah, great game to everybody involved. If you guys are interested in sending some replays into the channel, make sure you check out the links below. Also, make sure to follow them on Twitch. They also have a Twitter account, which I believe is linked down in the description as well. But that's it for me. Take care, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.